The vast proportion of chemicals used in the workplace, together with the liquefied petroleum gas, may also fall under the dangerous substances and explosive atmosphere regulations, and each of which requires the effective management and control of risk. So when considering the management of chemicals and LPG, formalized procedures must be produced, implemented, and monitored in relation to their use, storage, transportation, and disposal, and appropriate training in all areas, including the handling of chemicals and LPG gas cylinders, is critical to securing the safety of all those in the workplace and others who may be affected. First control measure we have is the elimination. So ideally, the use and storage of flammable chemicals and substances and LPG should be avoided where reasonably practicable, and the same can be said for using low flashpoint liquids. But where and when this cannot be achieved, other chemicals and substances or liquids which are either non-flammable or have a higher flash point may provide a suitable safer alternatives. Also, it must be noted that reactive chemicals whose properties in themselves are non-flammable but may react violently, even explosively, when mixed together, should also be considered in relation to substituting them for less reactive materials. Next point you need to concern about is the storage. Where substitution cannot be accommodated, the provision of the safe storage must be considered as a key element in reducing the fire and explosion risks from the hazardous materials. So of course arrangements should be made for storage of flammable liquids, gases and substances to be stored well away from other processes and general storage areas. And this is most effectively achieved by a physical distance, but an alternative approach may be to provide a physical barrier such as a wall or partition combined with a storage system or container. And in case of the storage facility is to be located within a building and the hazardous materials are to be handled within the area around the store, fire-resisting separation from other areas of the building or workplace should be considered. Bear in mind the arrangements for storing flammable substances and LPG will depend upon the storage facilities available and the amount of hazardous materials and the nature of the materials. For example, when storing large quantities, maybe 50 liters or more, ideally an external storage area will be provided that will include the following considerations. Firstly, segregation from other processes and storage by a physical distance and firewall. Then security against unauthorized access and locking mechanisms and physical walls and fences. And here we can mean also the security against arson. And this storage must be positioned in a well-ventilated area, taking into account the potential heat of the containers from a fire within or outside the premises boundary, and a fire within the storage facility on buildings, a plant, and people inside or outside the premises. And also it must be positioned away from the sources of ignition like electrical supplies. And for more information you will find the acknowledged safe separation distances are detailed in the following table. Next example is the arrangements for the storing of large quantities of LPG gas cylinders. And actually they are similar to those required for flammable liquids. And in addition to providing adequate levels of signage on site, a formal system of work will need to be developed and implemented. Firstly, you have to keen on environmental protection arrangements, keeping rubbish and anything combustible well away from the cylinders, and keep weeds and grass in the vicinity cut down, and prevent any electrical equipment or vehicles or bonfires or other sources of ignition near the cylinders. And you have to prevent smoking when changing cylinders, and also prevent people not involved with the storage or installation gaining access to it, especially children. And you have to protect against accidental damage, ensuring that the pipe work is properly routed and supported, and also enable reports of any equipment failure or damage to the supplier without delay. Next point is the internal storage, where flammable substances can be stored within specially designed separate buildings and saved by position, the same control measures as those required for outdoor storage, with the additional requirement that the building should generally be constructed of non-combustible material, and the roof of the building be of a lightweight materials, and the roof would open readily to release the effect of an explosion, therefore acting as explosion relief. And the ventilation of any building used for a flammable material store must also be considered, as the ventilation bricks must be positioned to allow airflow within the store. And all containers that are to be used to store flammable liquids should be designed and constructed to meet the standard of being suitable for the purpose. And also containers need to be a performance tested type. They should be robust and have well-fitting lids and spear-resistant tops to prevent leakage if knocked over, and to ensure that no chemical or physical interaction occurs which might cause leakage. The material from which the containers are made needs to be compatible with the properties of the liquid. In addition, containers may need a protection against corrosion. You have to know that LPG cylinders can also suffer degradation from corrosive atmosphere, particularly in the relation to some chemical operations. Therefore, the use and storage of the cylinders should reflect the workplace conditions and be stored outside. Last point in this lecture is training, and as discussed at the start of this lecture, training is a key element for ensuring effective management of the organization's fire safety, and in particular with regards to flammable substances and LPG. And any training program must cover the arrangements for the safe handling and storage of these hazardous material. So an outline of such a program may be as follows. It should explain the types of flammable substances in use and their properties and hazards, and the general procedures for safe handling of substances and operation of plant. Also use of a personal protective equipment and clothing, and housekeeping arrangements, and also reporting of incidents and faults, including spills and minor leaks. Also specific instructions on individual items of equipment and plant and processes. And don't forget the emergency procedures, including raising the alarm and the use of appropriate firefighting equipment and also spill kits. Here's the end of this lecture. Thanks for watching and see you later.